Hi, welcome to Transcendent Psych. This is the second video looking at the kind of what I'm calling the love laws, the laws of love, kind of living and loving with power. In the last video, I looked at the practice of self-compassion and how we might counteract our constant tendency to self-criticism, that constant drip, drip, drip of self-critical narrative through a deliberate practice of what I call micro-compassions. Today, I'm looking at how we might extend that practice into being compassionate towards others. And it might be through doing it through micro compassions towards others. It might be through kind of one offs. We'll see what you need. So, last time we looked at the idea of criticism and how it comes from the Greek word krinein, meaning to separate out and to constantly look out for, good, bad. It's constantly about categorizing things. And I said that it's useful for dealing with things, but it's trickier for dealing with relationships and for dealing with people. The critical tendency tends to treat ourselves and others almost as objects. Objects are simpler compared to people. Something might be kind of, well, that's in terms of its purpose, that might not be good to eat, right? People are a kind of mix of helpful and unhelpful traits when we're in relationship with them. So it's unfair usually to describe someone as bad or even all good, right? We're a mix, and it depends on kind of what matters to us, how we kind of decide that. And also we might add, should we always or ever really simply be looking at human beings as means to an end, right? Are people simply tools to get things that we need in life, a bit like objects, or are people of value in their own right? So that's an important question you might want to ask yourself. How do I approach others? How do I see them? When we work a lot in life, if you're living a working life, it's very easy to start treating people as means to an end. Like if you're a team manager, right? Or if you have people that work kind of under you, do you tend to see people merely as a means to an end, kind of like a capitalist kind of piece of machinery in your factory or your office or what have you, right? If we see people as means to an end, we're going to objectify them typically, and it's going to make us quite judgmental potentially. All right. Now, one of the things I want to say is if we have any self-awareness, right, of ourselves, we know that we are a mix of strengths and weaknesses. We might call them faults, right? We know that of ourselves. And so when we think about other people, we're going to need to approach other people with that knowledge. Not a single fault in a person can never sum up that person. But that is the tendency of that critical faculty of the mind. When you find yourself and you catch yourself, and if you're anything like me, if you catch your mind judging people when you're watching telly or when you're meeting them for the first time, what have you, or you're working with someone and you catch that thought, even if it's true, right? Do you then write off that person to some extent in your mind as that? You've just fixed a label to them, all right? Or are you able to sort of step back and think, well, okay, they're not so great when it comes to that, but actually they've got all sorts of other strengths, and they're a human being, and they're kind of lots of lovely things about them, whether they're useful to me or not, right? So it's that approach of not objectifying people, seeing the broader picture, and not simply seeing people and judging them and summing them up. That critical faculty, good, bad, which is what that capacity of the brain wants to do, and sort of splitting people up into those kind of binary categories, right? So if you see yourself doing that, stop yourself a moment and step back. Now, having said all that, we do want to be smart, right? You're going to need to be discerning about people. People that you will come across in the course of your lifetime, some people that are unsafe to be around, right? You need to exercise some discernment, all right? And even if someone is an unsafe person to be around, you don't have to write them off as all bad, but you might need to kind of think about, actually, this isn't someone that's safe to live with or to be around. Or that it might be this person actually is not someone I can be spending too much time with. They kind of bring me down too much. It's unhelpful. But still keep an open mind about, actually, I don't need to write that person off. So what I'm focused on less is your actual practical relationship with those people, and those kind of perhaps rarer situations where you need to safeguard yourself. I'm focusing in this video more on our general attitude that shapes how we then show up in the world, so that we don't come into this world with this very kind of critical, objectifying approach to people. But I will say your brain is always going to do that. Your brain is always going to throw up those kinds of thoughts. And so what we're going to need is a practice that helps us to be able to not just get stuck in that one rut, that rigid, narrow way of thinking, but enables us to go, whoa, back up. Okay, how else can I think about this person? And some of the answer to that is going to be, it's not about just thinking. It's about getting in touch with, as I said last time, compassion also involves intention, involves the heart, it involves that emotional compassion. Okay, so if you struggle with being critical, what could you do? I'm going to start just with some philosophical reflections, first of all. And I think one of the things we could do at a philosophical level is let's say you're working with someone that's quite difficult, or you're around a family member that's quite difficult, right? Just pause for a moment and step back and think, did that person wake up one day and decide to sort of be a bad person, perhaps in the way that we've judged them as? Chances are that there's going to be loads of positives about that person we're not focusing on. We focused in on a negative aspect or an irritating aspect. It might be, if it's someone that we just know at a more acquaintance level, it might be we just don't know them well enough. We're just knowing that one or two annoying traits that we've kind of now globalized into, well, that person's just that. And this is the most important thing I want to say is, even though we all have faults, almost all of our faults are unchosen. Like I said, no one wakes up in the morning and goes, how annoying could I be today? Maybe there are some people that do that, I don't know. But I just feel that there are very, very, very few people who wake up in the morning and think, how annoying or how bad a person could I be today? Most of our faults come down to life experience, difficult life experiences we might have gone through, either as children or as adults. Or they come down to the defenses we've put up around those difficult life experiences, and those hurts. Or they come down to simple ignorance or lack of awareness. We are surprisingly good at noticing other people's faults and not noticing our own faults, right? So that person maybe just isn't noticing that thing, because we're all like that. So just remember, like, if you can see things that are annoying about them, you've probably got things about you that are annoying to them that maybe they're not commenting on. All right. So, there's that famous saying, isn't there, of Christ in the Gospels, it's like, well, first maybe take the log out of your own eye, and then you can take the speck of dust out of your brother's. We are, and that's validated through psychological literature. We know people are far better at spotting the faults, the big faults in others. But and do you know what? And I think this is what's hinted at in that passage in the Gospels, we tend to focus in on those things in other people that most annoy us about ourselves that we can't see. There's a whole psychological literature. It's, what's it called? Projective identification. I think it's something like that, if I remember correctly. It's like, I might be, here's one I might have done. I might get annoyed sometimes at my own kind of smug intellectualism, or I think I know it all, right? And so I will get annoyed sometimes if I see someone who I think, that person really thinks they know it all, and I get kind of annoyed at them. But actually, it's a trait I might sometimes see in myself, and I think, That's actually something I don't like in me, potentially. And again, it might be that's not even true of me. I might be just being harsh to myself, but that judgment sits difficultly within my own psyche. And so what I'm doing is I'm attacking it in somebody else's. So just think about that. Just think about those things. People don't choose to be deliberately kind of annoying and difficult. They are often just unaware of things, or it's you might be projecting it onto them. It might be your own issues. So just take some of those reflections um, into account. The key thing I want to say here is that so where it is true that someone has a fault, right, we might think of it as a maladaptive behavior. I mean, their behavior may well have been adaptive and worked in their childhood. Maybe they had to be defensive in a certain kind of way because of the people they had to cope with in their growing up circumstances or previous work experiences, or etc., etc. So we all develop maladaptive behaviors that don't fit in well to every single other person that we meet. Okay. And that become kind of out of date. They kind of just don't adapt to each and every life situation. But we very often don't notice those things. Okay, we don't notice what we're doing. We're not choosing these behaviours maliciously. So it's kind of approaching other people with that slack, with that generosity of spirit. And now I notice I'm coming back to the heart again. So coming away from that critical good bad dichotomization that the mind likes to do, that separating out, and it's coming back to a much more heartfelt positive intention towards others, which kind of asks, or maybe gives them some slack. Maybe they don't notice that. Maybe it's me projecting that onto them to some degree. It may not be, but at least ask the question. Have you checked yourself first? I think that's the best thing to do. Like have they been hurt in some way in the past that causes them to relate in this way to people? Um, could that generate a little bit of compassion in me? I don't know. We don't know the vast amount of information about people that we are acquainted with. People don't tell us their deepest hurts. They hide them. You know that for yourself. You know that's exactly what you do. People don't want to seem vulnerable. And often it's the prickliest, most difficult people to be with that might be the most hurt. Okay. So it might not be that. It might not be that. But just bear in mind what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. So that could slow you down in terms of being critical and judgmental. Just stepping back into that uncertainty. I really don't know everything about this person. Okay. So then what I would invite you to do is to pay attention from the heart, from good intention, and imagine maybe like if this person were my child, okay, what would I want for them? So this could be your very small micro compassion towards others. Just pause a moment. This thing about this person is difficult to be with. If they were my child, what would I want for them? And I'm then going to share with you something from the Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron, which I think is really helpful. Now, there's an actual name for this kind of almost mantra within Buddhism, but I think it's quite beautiful. It doesn't matter whether you've got no religion or you're a different religion. I think we could all sign up to this. And what she does is she gives us these words that we can use almost as an inner wish or prayer, if you prefer, or positive intention, if you prefer, that we just silently in our heart direct towards that person. You might want a very brief, quick version for that for when you're kind of going about your working day or your normal day in your family or amongst other friends or whatever. Traveling, driving's the worst, isn't it? Like how quickly we get annoyed with other people. Well, maybe I'm speaking about myself, but yeah, judging people really quickly. So her words go like this. This is the wish. This is the intention that you speak from the heart, as it were, in silence. Don't go up to them and say this. Well, you might want to, but I suggest you probably just do this quietly from the heart. She says, may all sentient beings enjoy happiness and the root of happiness. May we be free from suffering and the root of suffering. May we not be separated from the great happiness devoid of suffering. May we dwell in the great equanimity, free from passion, aggression, and prejudice. I'm going to say bits of that again. Now, this has got a massive Buddhist context to it around getting to that place of greater liberation. But just the simple intention of just the first bit there may be enough of a thing to learn by heart when you're working or being around people that might be difficult. So you might want to personalize it to them. May John, or may Mary, or may Narinda, whoever the name, put the name in there. May they, as a sentient being, enjoy happiness and the root of happiness. May they be free from suffering. So it could be just pause in your heart when you're in a conversation with someone that's difficult, and you just quietly inside yourself just say, may you be happy, may you be free from suffering. Why do we do this? Like, you want to positively intend that for the other person, but in positively intending that for the other person, what happens? It frees you up from being in that place of critical, separating out judgment, good or bad. And it just, you come out of that kind of dualistic, good, bad, splitting mindset into the unity of the heart of just a single, unified, positive intention of compassion and love for that person. May you be happy, and may you enjoy the root of happiness. May you be free from suffering. And if you can't remember all that, just may you be happy, may be enough, or may you be free from suffering. I would challenge you to practice that intentionally. Write it down on a piece of paper, keep it in your pocket just so you got it as a reminder, and practice that for a day. Whoever you happen to come across, phone calls with clients at work, people in your office, members of your family, people that you that drive in front of you or cut you up when you're driving, the grumpy shop assistant at the shop, may you be happy, may you be free from suffering. Thanks for listening. Oh, also, if you haven't yet, do subscribe and put a like in there if you like this. Thanks. Oh, and a comment, because I'd love to hear and usually reply to what you say. If you don't mind, I'd be very appreciative. Thank you. See you next time.